So, you know the new documentary is out. Have you had a chance to see it yet? I don't even know how to put it into words yet because I just watched
Mhm.
it before I went to bed last night just to watch it one time to gloss over and put my thoughts together before I rewatch it and make notes. Documentaries have a way of angling what they are storytelling into what they want people to believe. So
Right.
there was some of that in this documentary, but it wasn't as bad as Phoenix Rising. They did not mention quite a few things I would have expected, and I think it was on purpose. Like the autobiography, they purposely didn't seem to really talk about. But they have that girl, Bianca Allaine Kye, who makes the allegations that she was a minor and then
Right.
later in adulthood.
Right, right. Wait, but doesn't that depend on, like, what state she was in and all? I guess in the state she was in or whatever, she was considered a minor?
So when she filed her lawsuit in New York under the New York Adult Survivors Act, she added
Mhm.
all of these allegations from when she alleges she was a minor at 16 from Texas, from Louisiana. But in New York, that doesn't mean anything because that law is for abuses alleged over the age of 18. So they made her remove the minor allegations about a month ago, but last year she volunteered to remove that information from the lawsuit.
Okay.
She's in this documentary, but they don't really talk about everything. They don't talk about the weird use of his lyrics or posters or that record companies were in on it or John Doe's were in on it. They make it sound more sensical than it
Mhm.
actually is. However, in two of the episodes, they put a disclaimer specifically for her and her contradictory statements and not being able to provide anyone to corroborate her allegations. The fact that there was not a large swath of women in the documentary making allegations, it was just her and Evan Rachel Wood. And they interviewed an old band member, the personal assistant, but you did not see a large swath of accusers like you hear in the media. It was released in Canada. It's going to be released in Finland or Sweden at the end of the month. Nothing about the US or UK. There is not this big push, and the documentary doesn't have dozens of accusers.
Mhm.
So it's a very interesting way that they are putting this information out there without much effort.
Well, it's kind of telling that I didn't even hear about this documentary, the release, because I follow news pretty tight. I make 2 videos a day, and I look for stuff, and
Mhm.
I can't recall even hearing about this. I remember hearing about it or something, but it wasn't even really, like, enough for me to, like, go after and think about and try to cover, you know what I mean? It's just kinda like,
Yeah,
"Eh."
the more that come forward and make allegations, there is more of a likelihood for evidence.
That's what
And
I've been saying for years. Yeah.
Evan Rachel Wood and Esme Bianco literally testified in Congress that they had evidence. But this is a second documentary that she's making new allegations at.
So I tried to take my evidence to the state in an attempt to stop this from happening to anyone else. My evidence included photographs and video, not just relying on memory. It cannot be viewed by the state because the statute of limitations on my case has run out. And
When I finally found the courage 7 years later to seek legal advice, I was told, despite having photographic, video, and written evidence, it was too late. Nothing could be done.
She had an opportunity. There's an investigation. Why isn't he cleared? Or at least if they found something, which I doubt they did, they would have said so by now.
Right. Pretty much everything in life revolves around mathematics and numbers. Some people don't like that, but it's true. And like if there was only 3 women that came out and had no evidence, that would be more believable than what's the number now? Like they say 20 or whatever the hell it is.
Well, it depends on where you get your information. If you read one news article from 2021, it'll say a dozen, another will say 16. If you follow the hate pages, they'll say 50 to 80. I mean,
Yeah.
it changes depending on where you get your information. So even the media doesn't have an accurate reflection of what that number
Right.
is.
Right. Well, if you take it to an extreme and you say it's 10,000, how could that possibly be? That would be like unbelievable because then it would just be people repeating things.
Right.
Just like parrots down the line. So, like, the more you have, the less sense it makes. It's just simple mathematics.
In the third episode, they feature some clips from Kristen, Colonel Kurtz, and oddly, the Gallus
What, they
sisters.
do? Really?
Yeah, well, actually, in the very first episode, like in the introduction, they show
Oh,
a
I
really
think I
quick
heard about
clip.
that. Oh god.
But and here's the thing. This is also what interests me is the fact that Kristen put out last year exactly what clips they took from. So to me, it seemed pretty clear that they were likely going to angle her against Kine as being a harasser because Bianca Kine alleged in her lawsuit that she had to add her name to it because someone doxed her home address. Meanwhile, if you actually read the court documents, they were actually going to make an issue of her needing to add her name to the lawsuit. That is Marilyn Manson's attorneys. Were filing documents to force her to put her name on it.
Just recently, one of the attorneys for the plaintiff, Bianca Allaine, who has been going by the pseudonym Jane Doe because she didn't want her identity to come out in public for obvious reasons, because a couple of years ago, she told a completely different BS story to the media. And so now that story from 2 years ago is in direct conflict in a number of significant ways with the lawsuit that she just filed. So she wanted to keep her identity secret. Unfortunately for her, yours truly and other purveyors of the truth on the internet, such as Marilyn Manson Uncancelled and the Manson cases, and a number of other pro Marilyn Manson accounts, we are not bound by the rules of the court for court proceedings. And so we spent the last week or so exposing this woman as the fraud that she is. And so just now, her attorneys have conceded that they are not going to fight Marilyn Manson's request that this woman's name, Bianca Allaine, be disclosed going forward. So the Jane Doe thing, it's going to get dropped.
So it seemed kind of planned that they would say this and not prove that this ever happened. That, oh, I have to come forward now because someone doxed me. Odd, but okay. I don't see proof. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but no one's ever seen it. And so my assumption was, as I've seen on social media, especially from the hate pages, they like to say that we are online harassers. So my assumption going into this, based on what they clipped from Colonel Kurt's YouTube channel that she put out last year, was they were going to angle her and then some of us as online harassers based on what Evan Rachel Wood's attorney said when Smithline recanted, based on her one video where I guess it could be construed she was celebrating that Kine had to add her name to the lawsuit, that air quote, we did it. And my thinking was, wow, they're going to angle this as Kristen harassing them, as us harassing her, even though that's not really what happens. Anyways, but my point is that is not how it was angled in the documentary at all. And I kind of figure, or at least I wonder if that is because they had to put so many disclosures in about her allegations not really matching up and being contradictory from her lawsuit, from her public statements made in 2021, more so on a public podcast.
My sexual experiences with him didn't really begin until, and this is where people are going to start blaming me.
Nobody's going to blame you.
When I was about 19.
And even her statements made in this documentary contradict all of those things. I could go on. But in terms of Kine, they majorly prop up her attorneys at the end of the third episode because Rolling Stone is part of this. So Rolling Stone is propping up Jeff Anderson of Anderson Advocates, propping him up as the person that will make all of this change in the rock industry. And Rolling Stone films, since they're part of this, they sort of make themselves the hero of this docuseries and their air quote investigation. I guess that's the simple way to put it, how much they prop themselves up and what is in the documentary and then what is not in the documentary.
So as far as like his like uncancellation, like, do you think like this tour marks him moving on to more things and more, let's just say, like companies and managers and things being open to working with him?
I believe so. Marilyn Manson started as a shock rocker, a musician. Then he became an actor, and then he became an artist. All of these things, all of these careers were then canceled for him. And even his wife faced cancellation based on allegations by Evan Rachel Wood at that time. So to me, it signals that he is moving on with his life despite the continued allegations. You saw there's that new documentary out in Canada right now. They still did a tour. They're still releasing music. I hear there's an album coming from what it sounds like, from what Eddie Trunk had said nearly a year ago. So they're choosing to move on despite all of this, knowing that there was a documentary, knowing they're going through lawsuits, and there is still his lawsuit against Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore, even though it's still kind of slow moving with it going on in appeal. So I think, yes, this is going to open a lot of opportunity for him. And if anything, we can see that it's working for him. He has sold
Right.
out shows in Europe. He's had headline shows in the US that have sold out. His
Mhm.
music, 2 singles so far, have reached number 1 or 2 on the hard rock singles chart. This is going to work out for him in a way that I think no one really anticipated, because when you see people canceled, or celebrities, I should say, canceled, you never really know how they are going to come back. And we're starting to
Mhm.
see, I think, a shift, not since Johnny Depp in a way, but I think he was the start of that, where we're slowly moving towards this cultural shift again of the pendulum swinging the other way.
Right. Right.
And I think I've said this before, but the fact that there was not a large swath of women in the documentary making allegations.
Right. I went into this. It's kind of like the boy that cried wolf, right? Like, okay,
Mhm.
he cries wolf like 3 or 4 times. The people come from the village. There's no wolf, right? And then, like on the fourth or fifth time, like, yo, sorry, kid, there's no wolf. So that's it. There's no wolf, right? They don't think there's a wolf, right? But like, if there was evidence there was a wolf, they would bring their guns. They would protect the kid. And, it's like, well, how do you tell there's a wolf? Well, if the kid got bitten, they'd know there's a wolf. If the wolf's hair was around the area, they'd know there's a wolf. If there was like wolf footprints, they'd know there's a wolf. I mean, you've got to have some evidence for the lie that you're crying about.
It's interesting with Evan Rachel Wood in this documentary with these claims, because she was in another documentary in the mid 2000s saying completely different things about Marilyn Manson that were positive. So to me, it kind of shows it depends
Right,
on
right,
the
right.
angle
Yeah,
they're
that's the
going
whole
for.
thing, right. And not only
Right.
that, she was saying positive things about him in their personal relationship too.
Right. Even in that same documentary, I think the documentary I'm thinking of is from A&E, and I think it was created in 2010, towards the end of their relationship.
What do you think's like the best, most interesting main topic that's come up in like the last week or two?
The
Like the
last week
focal
or
point.
two,
What do you think's the focal point?
I believe the most relevant thing is seeing Marilyn Manson come back on a very successful scale with
Yeah,
his
okay.
tour, with his music, and despite the allegations, he's able to move forward and work on his career again.